Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us on a summer Sunday afternoon. I'm Nancy Severin, and I'm Province 6 President, and I also serve as the Province President's Facilitator on the National Council. Today, the 8 Province Presidents have come together to offer a conversation, or as we say, a Zoominar, on how to explore the wonder of Zoom meeting. We'll offer some introductory tips about the Zoom platform in hope that those less acquainted with the format will become more comfortable when using it. And for those who are well acquainted, will discover that hosting a Zoom meeting isn't as daunting as it sounds. For the foreseeable future, Zoom and other virtual platforms will be the mainstay for meetings for nearly every organization. So befriending technology will make it easier for us all. We hope you enjoy this lighthearted but informational conversation. We begin our first slide with Kathy from Province 5.
Thank you, Nancy.
Monica, you need to screen
Yeah, we need the screen. Thank you. Welcome again to everyone. And as Nancy said, I am Kathy Schultz from Province 5. Our discussion will continue and go on soon. So make yourself comfortable as we maneuver through these tips on using Zoom and virtual etiquette. To be a proper virtual meeting participant, the first thing to do after settling in, as we saw this morning, is to mute your audio. And you'll see on the screen on the left-hand side, as you scroll down on your Zoom screen, is the microphone, and that's how you mute or unmute yourself. Or you click on the square, as Annie said earlier, and the little word mute is there, and you can use that. But it's so that we do not hear all those background noises around you. Our homes have all kinds of things going on sometimes. So you mute yourself unless it's you need to speak or make a comment, ask a question. That way we're not talking over one another also. The trick is, of course, is to remember to unmute yourself when it is time for you to speak. So as you see on the screen, you scroll down to the bar, and there are the icons. So next to the mute button is the video, and we need to have that on in order to see your picture. That needs to be on. If you want to hear but you don't want to be seen for some reason, you click on this video and your name will show on your little square in the gallery, but we won't see you. You can also use this if you want to maybe step away for a moment, and then we don't see all your movement and going away from the computer. And as we go over towards the right, there's the participants icon, and it will tell us how many participants are there. And I'll come back to that in a minute. We'll go into chat, which is circled. We use that to introduce ourselves. We've already seen some people introducing themselves at the end of the meeting. But the main use of it is to make a comment or ask a question. There are 2 options, and you can leave a message or send a message to everyone, or you can click on a name and send a private comment to someone. And back to the participants, I just want to mention that that is another way for you to be able to make a comment or ask a question. If you click on that, you have the option where there's a little hand, and it'll be like raising your hand, so the host will know that you have something to say. But unless you are the host of a meeting, these 3 circled items are the items you're going to most use when you are in a Zoom meeting. And next we have Annie.
Hi, I'm Annie Deister, and I'm president of Province 8. And I know we did get a comment during Kathy's presentation to please distinguish between the location of these icons on a tablet versus on a computer. What we're showing you is a laptop computer. But a lot of people use tablets, and sometimes we're going to go over that a little bit later. And so I just wanted you to know that, but there are different locations for different types of equipment. So prior to the pandemic, for more than 2 years, the Province 8 board has been holding monthly meetings using Zoom. We did it initially because the province geography is so challenging, covering so many states, and many of us on the Province 8 board were new and wanted to find a way to connect and come together and form a team. So we began forming relationships virtually and even held a day-long strategic planning workshop last year using Zoom, and that got us on our way. So we're very fortunate that we started down that path a couple years ago. Next slide, please. Well, while our initial intention was to find a way to easily see one another using Zoom meetings, we also discovered how much money we were saving by not having in-person province board meetings. We saved so much last year that we were able to subsidize the fall retreat held in Sacramento, and that resulted in a very large attendance for our retreat. Next slide. And then, boom, COVID hit. And, fortunately, Province 8 had already started using Zoom, but, it was really for the basics. It was really for just having a board meeting, maybe sharing a screen with a document or a PowerPoint, but nothing very fancy. But we did have that, and we were pleased that we did. And since the pandemic, many of our churches have also shifted to virtual formats, and we're going to discuss several of them during this presentation. They're using them for Sunday worship, small group meetings, vestry meetings, trainings, outreach, all kinds of things. And some of our daughters who were already comfortable with using Zoom are being asked within their church to assist them to set up Zoom and other platforms. And so that's been an extra benefit that we're happy to provide. Next slide, we're going to Tammy.
Hi everyone, I'm Tammy Boyd. I'm the province president for Province 2, and I'm also the National Junior Daughter Chair. When we are setting up a meeting or starting a meeting, there's some etiquette that we like to share with people to help everybody to be able to get the best experience out of the Zoom meeting. You've already seen that we really need to have everybody mute themselves when they're not speaking, because that cuts down on the background noise and the feedback and makes it easier for everybody to be able to hear and share when it's their time. You can also use earpods or a headset to help improve your audio quality. And you want to turn off your video if you're walking or you're driving. Obviously, it's not safe to be doing that. You can just be listening to the meeting and participating through audio. Please wear appropriate attire for the event. You notice that many of us are wearing blue because it's a Daughters of the King event, and we want to, as presenters, be in appropriate attire. And if you're hosting, you want to be wearing attire that's appropriate for the event. And you want to avoid wearing stripes because they don't always film well, and it can be distracting if your stripes are moving. Now, I know it seems obvious, but don't go to the bathroom with your device or headset on. This actually does happen sometimes. You're listening to something, you're inadvertent, but you really don't want everyone in the meeting to be participating with you in the bathroom. So please be very careful as to where you travel to while you're participating in a meeting. If you can stay put, that's great. If you need to take a break, you just get up. You can turn off the video if you'd like, go and do your business, and then come back, okay? And then if the meetings are going to run long, you want to schedule in some breaks. If you know that you're doing a workshop that's going to take an hour and a half, you want to figure about 5 minutes for every hour just as you would if you were doing an in-person workshop or an in-person retreat. You wouldn't continue to keep on speaking and doing things. You would stop and give people a chance to refresh themselves. You want to do the same thing if you're doing a longer meeting with Zoom. And finally, you want to minimize visual distractions. You can use a curtain or a visual background, which will be showing it if you need to. You'll see it, many of us are just sitting in rooms that look like they could be a study or have a plain wall or plain pictures. You want to avoid having your favorite Megadeth poster in the background or anything that's, not going to be appropriate for the audience that you're with. Okay. Next.
Hi, I'm Monica Burden. I am the Province 1 president and also the PR chair, which means I'm sort of de facto the IT person for Daughters of the King, it seems. And I want to talk a little bit about virtual meeting platforms. Now, for this particular meeting, we are going to be discussing Zoom the most. And the reason for that is because that is the one that the national office has available to them. That is also available to you if you wish to schedule meetings through the national office. Keep in mind that they can get overwhelmed by scheduling requests, and hosting those meetings can become burdensome on them. So if you have the resources to use a virtual platform through your church itself or your diocese, you might turn to that first, or one of your individuals who has their own account. In addition to Zoom, there are plenty of other platforms that are available. GoToMeeting, Cisco WebEx, Google Meetings, Microsoft Teams, all of these will work to have a virtual meeting. If you want any of those, I personally am most comfortable on Zoom. I've done the other ones, but I find Zoom to be the most stable and the easiest to use. So I prefer it myself. It's what I own for my own small business. But if you need help with those other resources, let me know and I'll find somebody who can help you. Zoom has specific capabilities, and most of these other platforms have those abilities as well. Zoom has the abilities to have a host role and also multiple co-host roles. As you noticed when we first started this meeting, actually nobody had a host role. That has to do with how you set up the meeting. You can set up a meeting so that no host is required. Unfortunately, that has some drawbacks, like there is nobody who can actually mute everybody. So if you're having a large meeting, that is not what you want to do. If you're having a small meeting, that's a reasonable thing to do. But if you're having a much larger meeting, you want somebody who has the ability to mute and unmute people, to remove participants in case you have a Zoom bomber, somebody who's doing something that you don't want to see. You have the ability to remove them, and you have the ability to rename individuals so that you know who everybody is in the meeting. You can also, in Zoom, you can assign co-hosts as well, so you can have some people helping you with that. There are some capabilities that are only available to the host. Security, Zoom has very good security now. There's passwords for basically all meetings are required now, and you can set up a waiting room so that when people enter the meeting, they don't get just dropped straight into the meeting. They actually are in a little holding cell that a host or a co-host has to allow them into the main meeting. That way you can see a little bit ahead of time who's coming into the meeting. The Zoom and all of these other platforms have the ability to screen share, which we're taking advantage of right now. The ability to do a raise hand. So if you haven't seen it already, if you click on the participants button, it should open a little participants window for you. And down at the bottom there, it should say raise hand. That enables you to raise your hand so that the host can actually see that you have done that. Tony Light just raised your hand. So I just got that message because I am the host. Also, polling is an option that you have in Zoom if you set up a meeting to allow that. Not all meetings allow it, but it does allow you to do kind of a quick and dirty, just like a review. So if you wanted to say, everybody, you know, do you want to do this or not? And it says yes or no, they can click yes or no. And then when everybody has voted and you close the polling, then it will show you how people voted and what percentage of people said yes and what percentage of people said no. I would not recommend that for formal voting, but for informal things, that can be handy. And finally, Zoom has the ability to do breakout rooms. So for instance, if we wanted to take all of you here, we have, I don't know, 150, 160 of you here, and we wanted to break you into rooms say we wanted 10 different rooms with 10 different people talking about different things, we could distribute you into those specific rooms, and you would just have a few people to talk to. So those are the capabilities that Zoom has, and all of those other platforms have most of those abilities as well.
I almost forgot to unmute myself. And I have to tell you, I saw myself on here and I realized that I broke one of the rules. I have stripes. So I hope I don't look fuzzy to all of you. I'm going to talk to you about things to consider if you decide you're going to be the one to lead a virtual meeting. And I think that may be why some of you are here. You haven't maybe had the nerve to do that yet with your chapter meetings, or maybe you have, but you thought, oh, maybe I need to know a few more things. So if you're going to lead a meeting virtually, you should first think how you would do that if you were leading a regular meeting, in-person meeting. And so you would really do a lot of the same things. What you would do is you will gather all the materials and references you need to conduct a regular meeting, including the agenda and a copy of your bylaws close by in case there's a question that comes up. And then you, as you normally would, you would send out the agenda before the meeting and include the business and anything that you have to discuss or maybe even vote on. And voting can be done. You can have a voice vote if everybody unmutes, and you can say, you know, everybody that's in favor, they can say yes, then unmute, and then those that are not in favor, they could say no, and then ask everybody to please mute again. Or you can use that little hand raise thing that we talked about under beside your name, that we could use that. For any meeting, you would distribute the notice and information of the meeting well in advance. And this is especially important for a virtual meeting. You want to be sure your group knows it will be virtual, and that they receive the how to connect information well ahead of the scheduled meeting date. By doing this, this will give them plenty of time to make sure they have the needed equipment to participate. Also, when I send out a notice a couple weeks ahead of time, I like to follow up with a reminder a day or two before the meeting. And with virtual meetings, that's even more important, because in your initial email, it will have the connection information. And if it gets lost with all the other emails, then people can't find it. So it's good to send them out a reminder. With the invitation that you send out to the meeting, you should also, particularly if you're just starting doing this, send resources on how to participate in a Zoom meeting and how to take a test run on Zoom. Finally, when you or your group decide to meet virtually, you should make sure that the potential participants understand what equipment is needed for that, for participating in that meeting. It's most desirable to have high-speed internet access, but of course that isn't always the case. Even in my own situation, I'm in a rural area, and I had to ask everybody to please pray that the storm that I think is coming didn't come through, because I was afraid I would my internet would be interrupted and I would be disconnected. So you have to understand those things do happen. If you have problems downloading or streaming, you may have difficulty participating in a Zoom meeting because your signal may not be strong enough or fast enough. And it's a good idea to check your connection right before the time comes to join the meeting. Mine, again, it cuts out intermittently, and so I always, before I go on a Zoom meeting, I make sure that I'm getting internet. The preferred equipment for you in a Zoom meeting, particularly if you are the person leading the Zoom meeting, is to have a computer with a camera. And that is important, why it is important for you to do a Zoom test run before you ever lead a meeting, because you may find your camera on your computer isn't working, or maybe you don't even have a camera on your computer. And if that's the case, then you may have to buy a camera that you can add to your computer, or you may have to use something else. And that something else is you can also use an iPad or a tablet or a smartphone with video. And the very last resort is to call in on the telephone. But phones are the least desirable thing to use if you yourself are leading the meeting. Next slide.
Thank you, Kathy. This is back to me. Let's talk a little bit about running the meeting. We talked a little bit about host and co-host roles. Note that those are different than the chair of the meeting. If you are running a meeting of any size at all, by which I usually mean more than about 20 or 30 people, you do not want to be both the host and the person chairing the meeting. That's because it can get very complicated to try and follow who's entering the meeting, who needs to be muted, who needs to be responded to via chat, and to also run a meeting. So think about distributing that workload so that you have somebody who's really just doing the technical part and somebody else who's the chair of the meeting. The host, and then the co-host, if you choose to distribute this role across multiple people, is then the one who manages the technology and the participants. They're in charge of admitting people from the waiting room, muting and turning off videos as needed, removing participants if that's needed, handling any technical questions that might come up in the chat, and helps to even designate their name as the technical contact so that people can chat to them directly if they're having issues. Manage the recording of the meeting, or not recording the meeting, the start and stop of the recording, enabling the screen share. There are multiple in Zoom and the other platforms, there are multiple permissions that you can allow for screen sharing. But basically the host can handle who is allowed to do that. Setting up breakout rooms is something that only the host can do in Zoom. So that's one of those things that you do have to pay attention to. Co-hosts do not have access to the breakout room setup. They do have access to multiple breakout rooms once those rooms are open, but they can't do anything about setting it up or assigning people to different breakout rooms. That has to be done by the host. And finally, the starting of live streaming is something that only the host can do. That is to say that we didn't talk about this in the capabilities, but one of the things you can do with Zoom is you can also connect it to Facebook, and you can live stream on Facebook. So if you can live stream the meeting on Facebook. So if you're doing a very large meeting, you can also just have it be public, essentially. The moderator, you also need a moderator who is then the one who's going to handle the non-technical chat interactions, who's going to, make sure that when people raise their hand that they get responded to, flag down the chair and say, hey, somebody's got an issue. Those kinds of things are something that you might want to have a moderator role for. Judy, where are you?
Judy, you need to unmute.
Are we actually sure Judy is here? I'm not sure Judy is here.
It looks like she's frozen.
Uh-oh.
I'll be happy to jump in and take this slide. What we're looking at here is two different ways to distribute the image on your screen. One is called the gallery view, and it's obvious. That gallery view is all of us are in the gallery. We're all of our faces are there, all of our pictures are there. And then there's the speaker view, and Judy would have been the speaker. And so you see the gallery is kind of embedded up there at the top. Sometimes it's along the side. So you can still, stay in touch with these folks, but you've got a big picture of the speaker. And a lot of times people do that for Sunday worship. When the priest is talking, you'll go to the speaker view. And then when you're having, interaction with the congregation, you might go to the gallery view. And you'll notice the circle at the top right. That's for computers and many tablets. The iPad has a gallery view located elsewhere on the page, and I think Monica's going to cover that at some point. But it says the two options are gallery view or speaker view, and you get to control which image format you want to see. Next slide.
Hi, I'm Jane Searcy, Province 4 President. I'm glad to see everybody here today. And while we're talking about seeing each other, let's get used to seeing people on screen. As Annie just said, the gallery view gives you the opportunity to see up to 25 people at a time. It's best if everyone's microphone is muted, lest the excitement of seeing everybody, old friends, new friends, gets a little bit too exciting and we have electronic pandemonium. A smile or a wave are sufficient, or you can give an introduction and a greeting using the chat feature. Position yourself directly facing the screen at a comfortable distance from the screen and relax. Try to have your whole face showing. Tilt your screen so that you don't cut off your eyes or your mouth, and be sure that the face you present is tidy, interested, and focused on the speaker. Avoid sudden, strange, or embarrassing movements. Someone is always watching. Act as if you're at church or in a public meeting. The speaker view shows the speaker up close and personal, usually with a few others along the margins, depending on what kind of device you're using. Next slide. In any case, whether you are the speaker or the listener, try not to look or act like a hostage. Next slide.
Kathy Schultz, are you unmuted?
Kathy, you're still muted. Kathy, you're still muted.
Okay. It's a good idea to think about the background of where you are sitting in the meeting, at the meeting. Is it a little too busy looking? Or maybe your office is a little messy? You may want to use a virtual background if that's the case to minimize distractions. Again, at the bottom of the Zoom screen, you can click on the arrow next to the video icon. It'll give you a choice, a way to choose virtual backgrounds. You might want to show the beach or maybe the Golden Gate Bridge. Some computers, and I don't know about iPads, but some computers do not have this capability. Mine does not. But I could go to my own picture gallery and choose a picture that shows something of my personality, a favorite vacation landscape or something like that. I noticed some of you have used virtual backgrounds in this meeting. And on to Nancy.
Yes, in case you haven't made the connection before this, Zoom meetings and our monitors look like a remake of the Brady Bunch. For those who are too young to remember the program, trust me, it's spot on. However, if you've been on any number of Zoom calls, we don't always come across in such clear representation as only production companies can produce. It's a very good thing to test out your computer, laptop, iPad, or tablet well before the start of the meeting. There is always the chance for technical difficulties, glitches, if you will. So check to see that you have enough battery power on your computer. Check the volume on your computer. And check the lighting in your room and make sure your Wi-Fi connection is strong. Most importantly, make sure you have the correct login information on hand so that you're not trying to search for it just as the meeting is starting. Having everything in place 10 minutes before the meeting is worthy of a high five, an alleluia, and an amen. Wouldn't you agree, Tammy?
I do agree, and honestly, I've been caught myself that way before, where I've tried to log on at the last minute and then been searching frantically for a link or something, and the meeting has started without me, and I end up coming in late, which is never what any of us want to do. Now, we would love to have a miracle like Jesus appear in the background while we're doing a meeting, but quite often that's not the case. I myself conducted many meetings this spring as the Committee on Special Education chairperson for my home, and I saw all kinds of things running around in the background. So it's more than just what you have up behind you as a setting in the background. We're working in our homes, we're meeting in our homes. So it's not unusual to have a cat go by, a dog run through, children come and sit on the lap, and that can be very distracting to what's going on, because if there's a toddler on somebody's lap, everybody's watching the baby. I myself have seen people who are muted in the background yelling at their kids and telling them to get out of the room. I mean, you really want to try and find a place in your house where you're on your own. And I had the experience personally of my husband getting ready to go somewhere, and he walked right into a meeting that I was chairing and kissed me on the top of the head in front of all my coworkers and the people in the meeting. They thought it was quite funny, me not so much. So you just want to be aware of the fact that there are a lot of things going on in your house. So in addition to attending to what's immediately behind you, you want to try and find yourself a quiet space, close the room. Just like they would not follow you to church for a Daughters of the King meeting, you can ask them to please, this is my Daughters of the King meeting, leave me alone now. I'm going to my space and I will see you when I'm finished. Okay.
Make eye contact. Let the speaker know you're listening and the listener know you're speaking directly to her or him. Next slide.
Get used to delayed feedback. I had mentioned high-speed internet, but some people have slow internet speed, and most of us have somewhere in between. So when asking someone to respond, be patient. It may take them a nanosecond or two to even hear what you have said, and then another nanosecond or two to respond to that. So please be patient. It may not be the fact they haven't unmuted, it's just taking their internet a little longer to get to you. Also, because we all have different internet speeds, group responses could sound like Pentecost all over again. So you may want to have everybody mute and only unmute people that need to be unmuted. I recommend one person lead the prayers, the motto, whatever you're going to be saying together, and that person be unmuted, and the rest of you be repeating that at home, but you will be muted. And if you're doing a litany or a responsive prayer, you'll need to have one person leading while another is assigned to lead the responses, and the rest of us will respond muted. So just get used to the fact that sometimes we get frozen, as we have seen that happen. So just have patience. Next slide.
Smile. Look like you're enjoying the meeting, even if you're not. If you can't muster up a smile, or you're multitasking or just bored, turn off your video so you can just listen. And be sure to turn off your video before you go to sleep. Next slide.
Yes, there is such a thing as Zoom fatigue. Those susceptible to this condition are the ones spending a large amount of time in front of their screen. You'll note the causes of this condition on the left side of the slide. It is quite easy to multitask on a Zoom meeting if you aren't leading it, texting on your phone, making grocery or to-do lists. And while most of us are Zooming from home, there are even more distractions there. The house phone ringing, the family bustling about, and the pets needing attention. And with more increased screen time with all your involvements, all our involvements, we can succumb to less human contact time. We might find ourselves getting up early or working way into the night on other computer work, and our eyes suffer from the constant gazing. All of which to note that there is also Zoom or screen self-care. On the right side of the screen, we offer some possible solutions to make all this less stressful. Avoid multitasking, focus on what's before you, and if the Zoom meeting allows it, ask for breaks. If you are Zooming from home, as most of us are, choose a quiet space where there won't be a lot of distraction in the background to avoid on-screen stimuli. If you participate in several virtual social gatherings, make sure your attendants know that they can opt out at any time without judgment. And as always, for your physical well-being, alternate your work during your day or your week. Space your video time. Switch to calling someone on the phone. Take a short walk or attend to a light housekeeping duty and then sit down to tackle emails. We mustn't forget that variety is the spice of life and the health of life, but we always remember to take care of ourselves. And Annie, I think it's time to wrap it up.
Thank you, Nancy, and everybody else. So we've had some pretty good comments here, and I'm just gonna close this out with the top 10 takeaways. And at the very top is the first one, be patient. And one of the things I want to say about being patient is, even though it may seem like it's easy to set things up, that we quickly are able to see one another on the screen, sometimes there are glitches. We've talked about that. They happen for a variety of reasons. And one of the things I want you to keep in mind is it's not often your problem. It's often something that's just inherent in the system or the situation at hand. Your internet is down, or there's too much demand in your particular area. So some people have said to me afterwards, oh, I'm sure I did something wrong. I missed that. Well, maybe you didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes, you know, this stuff just happens. So give yourself a break and, you know, don't beat yourself up over that. The second thing is to evaluate your technology options. Check to see what the daughters that you will be having meetings with, check to see what kind of devices they have. As we've mentioned, desktop computers, laptop computers, tablets, and cell phones all are being used by daughters across the country. And there are some nuances in the way those operating systems work. And we want to make sure that everybody has access to that and is appreciative of that, and that we share that information if people need it. Understanding what your technology allows will help you help them participate fully. If you find that you're going to need more information about this particular area, we are going to offer a more individualized training if you need it, a practicum, if you will. And we'll be talking about that at the very, very end. Delegate roles. We mentioned, you know, you've got to have a host, you've got to have a meeting moderator, you've got to have somebody who is the convener of the meeting. And just like you would in a regular meeting, Sometimes you've got somebody taking notes. Sometimes you've got somebody making sure all the handouts are done and are distributed. Sometimes you've got somebody collecting materials. It's just like you would do in a regular meeting, but make sure you know who's running the technology, who's running the meeting, and who's monitoring things like the chat room. That's really, really important, because that's where a lot of the questions come. The next is provide instructions. And Kathy mentioned that. She said, it's really important to make sure everybody knows the Zoom number and the password, and that you send that out well in advance. But we all appreciate, it's great to have a reminder maybe a couple of days before, or even again the day of, because we get inundated with emails, we get inundated with messages, and we just find that providing those instructions multiple times helps people. Otherwise, we end up getting text messages during some of our Zooms with somebody saying, "What's the Zoom number? I can't find it." So make sure you provide those instructions early for people who like to get prepared, and also a little later for people who might have misplaced that number. Number 5 is use a script. I don't know if you've been able to see, but all of us on this Zoom call, all of us doing this PowerPoint, have used a script. It is a way to stay focused. It's a way to make sure we cover the materials we want to cover, and it keeps us on schedule. So many of you have participated in the Conversations with Daughters on alternating Saturdays. We all use a script there too, for the same reason. It helps us stay on point. It helps us cover the things we need to cover. Organize how to maximize participant comments if that is important. So if you want to make sure you capture all the questions, make sure somebody's in charge of that. Make sure you are recording the meeting if that's what's needed. But think about it ahead of time. Think about what you want to have once the Zoom meeting is over. It's hard to go back and redo it from your memory. Think about that ahead of time. Next, train and practice. So the 8 of us province presidents, we had 2 training sessions. This is the live session, obviously, but we got together and talked about scope. We talked about the things that we might want to cover. We had a draft PowerPoint that we used just as a starting point. We narrowed that down. We developed the actual PowerPoint, and then we talked about what each person might say with each slide. And then we had sort of the dress rehearsal where we all read from our scripts, and we modified our scripts with one another and helped improve the overall program. Expect delays. We've mentioned it. We're mentioning it again. You got to be patient, and you have to expect delays. So one thing that some of us do is that we build in a little wiggle room, just in case, some people get bumped off, and then they have to come back in, and then you have to kind of backtrack a little bit. Just build in a little bit of wiggle room, a little to account for these delays. And then, of course, there's the episodic delay of just, somebody, their system being a little bit slower than somebody else's. And then you say, well, what if everything goes smoothly? I don't need that delay. Well, there are worse things than ending a meeting early. So if you could save that delay time and end a meeting early, you might be the everybody's best friend for that day. Plan sensitive meetings carefully. We didn't talk about this with the other slides, but this is just basic Daughters of the King 101. Sometimes, we are dealing with sensitive issues. Sometimes we're dealing with things that are confidential. And so we need to behave accordingly, just as if you were doing that in person. And you know that sometimes if you were going to have a meeting about something and there was going to be something sensitive, you might have a pre-conversation with a couple of people to give them a heads up, or to make sure you understand what their issue is or where their view is. It's not fun to be on a Zoom meeting and have somebody sort of out of the blue come up with a topic that is really sensitive, and you're right in the middle of the issue and nobody told you it was going to be discussed. So we're just saying, use your head. The stuff we do in a regular meeting, that works on Zoom as well. And then the number 10 is have a backup plan. So let me talk about a backup plan. When we first started doing virtual church, I think it was around the second or third Sunday during that 10 o'clock hour, all across the country, the weirdest thing happened. Facebook Live sort of blew up, and it just froze and it went down. It was just inundated with demand. And so a lot of people trying to conduct church using Facebook Live, they were shut down. And nobody thought about having a backup plan. So at our church, what we do is we use the Zoom platform as our number one primary preference for Sunday worship. But we also are live streaming at the same time on Facebook and on YouTube. And everybody knows it. We send out an announcement in advance. We send it out the night before, so that if there's a problem, you can jump off of one platform and onto another and not miss a beat. But the most important thing is to have that backup plan. And if you don't have other options, then your backup plan is to maybe postpone the meeting to another time. That is also a backup plan. Just make sure everybody knows what it is. So at this point, I will be turning it back to Nancy and Monica, and I know they're going to want to facilitate your questions and your comments. We're getting great comments. I'm seeing a lot of them come through on the chat, and it's really adding a richness to this dialogue. And Monica is very well positioned to talk about signing people up for a practicum. If maybe you want to learn how to do the breakout rooms, you're about to do an assembly. In fact, we're doing one in Province 8. We're doing it on Zoom, and we're going to have breakout rooms. Just like if we were meeting in person, we would go into different rooms for different workshops. We're doing it on Zoom. So there may be something that you want that individual kind of training on. Monica's already sent the link for that into the chat room, but I'm sure she'll follow up with some more details. Nancy, take it away.
Well, we really appreciate your guys, all of us joining to receive this information. It looks like most of the questions on chat are technical issues, so I will have Monica speak to those. But if there is something you wish to ask on a different level, any of us would be more than happy to answer your questions. So first, I think, Monica, why don't you speak to those technical questions on chat?
Okay, let's start with a couple of things. I did put up a link for Zoom practicums. There are only 3 of them on there, and frankly, the practicum will be useless if we have 150 people on a meeting. So we're trying to get it down to about 20 or 30 people per meeting, and I did only put 3 up. So if you want a separate time, or if you have a group of 20 or 30 people that you want to put together, just send me an email and we'll set up a separate time for that. That just was I just kind of was doing that in a hurry. I know that's my personal website. I just threw it up today, so it looks janky, but it's real. I swear it's really me, and that's a legit site. And when you click on those links, you will go to a Zoom registration page that will register you for those particular meetings. Let's see. Somebody's gonna have to track back through the questions and throw them at me. I know somebody asked about if you schedule through the national office, are you stuck with the 40-minute limit? No, that is a paid account. Paid accounts are relieved from the 40-minute limit. So that account is no longer subject to the 40-minute limit, which is one of the reasons why you might want to do it. As I did say before, keep in mind that the national office staff has limited resources of their own, and particularly if you're scheduling something for a weekend, they don't work on the weekends. So you might want to think about using something local. It's also might be easier and more flexible for you to use something local rather than the national office, but that is there for you. And in order to get that, you would call the national office and talk to Mandy. What other questions did we have in here?
I know that they are, there are several questions about the differences between the location of the icons, the functional icons.
Yes.
For, you know.
So here's the thing. Every device is a little bit different. So it's hard to generalize for everybody. The reality is that in most desktops and laptops, those icons are going to be at the bottom. On the iPad, I think Carol posted that they're up in the upper right. I don't usually use an iPad, so I don't know where they are. I've seen them on the left on my iPad, and on an iPhone, it's a whole different thing. And if you're using another device, I've never used another device, so they may float around. But I can pretty much guarantee you that there is going to be a mute button, and if your device has video capability, you are going to have a video on-off capacity there as well.
Monica, there's also a comment from Donna Riggs, who says she's been told to reboot your device before the Zoom meeting to ensure unneeded apps are closed to improve connectivity. Maybe you could talk about that.
Correct. So from a technical perspective, basically streaming video takes a lot of bandwidth. So anything you can do to reduce other bandwidth that is going on in your house and on your computer can help with your meeting. So if you have a super important meeting that you want to run really smoothly, tell your husband, your kids, your parents, whoever it is that is in your house watching Netflix videos, tell them to stop so that they are not on the internet at the same time as you. Same with, and rebooting the computer is a similar thing. Basically, if you turn off everything else that is using bandwidth, you will have more bandwidth for your video capacity.
Grace Sears also asked the question, a very basic question, but somebody has to ask it because it's a totally legit question. Which phone number do you use if you have to call in?
It is a great question. I sort of hate the fact that so when you set up a Zoom meeting and you get the standard invite thing, it's got like 5 different phone numbers on it. I kind of find it annoying, but people do. Basically, Zoom is trying to distribute those phone numbers across the geographical region so that there is less delay, right? If everybody goes through one phone number, then there's a lot more delay on that particular phone number. So use the phone number that is closest to your location. As for how you dial in, and you'll notice there's also a section for the one-click dial. The mobile one-click dial. So that's hopefully if you're opening an email on your iPhone and you see that one-click dial and you click that one-click dial, hopefully your smartphone will recognize that, will dial it in. It will dial in the first number, which is sort of the number to connect, and then it will pause a little bit, which is what all those little commas are. It will pause a little bit, waiting for the little person on the other end to say, please enter your meeting ID. And then it will automatically input the meeting ID, and then it will automatically input the password, right? So that's what that one-click mobile number is supposed to do. That's not particularly helpful if you're just dialing directly in which case you have to punch in the meeting ID and the phone number and the password all yourself. So use the number that makes sense for you. If you can, if the one-click mobile works for you, great. If not, use one of the other numbers and just input those by hand. What was the rest of that question, Annie?
Well, I think you got it. But Dr. Taylor is asking a question of Jane. Are we going to have Province 4 Fall Assembly on Zoom? And Jane, maybe you want to answer that question.
Most definitely. We're making plans to do that now, and your province president should be advised within the week. And we'll have several planning calls. So it will be the same time it was planned to be at Canuga, but Canuga is closed to parties more than 10. So that would not work for us. So we're going to Zoom it. Hope to see you there.
And another one, Monica, and we have seen this happen before, people having difficulty with the audio connection, and sometimes feeling maybe they have to call in on their phone, or, you know, and that causes problems.
Correct. So you can, it is one way to get over an audio problem. So if for some reason your computer audio doesn't work, or your microphone on your headset is not working or whatever, you can call in separately with your phone so that you have your audio by phone and your visual by computer. That is doable. There are some caveats to that, particularly if you're using something like breakout rooms and your audio and your visual are in separate rooms. That causes problems. So it's not optimal, but it can be done if needed.
So does anybody have, has anybody raised their hand? Does anybody have a question that they want to ask using that approach?
Another question that I saw in the chat room, it says, where are the recordings found?
So the recordings of this, like the recording of this specific meeting, will get posted to the website, to the doknational.org website on Monday. I don't actually know specifically where Mandy will post those, so I can't give you a subset, but I'll make sure that she puts something on the front page that says, you know, Zoom tutorial is here, or something like that, so that it's pretty obvious from doknational.org. Just so that you know, from a technical perspective, if you have a paid Zoom account, you have the option to record it into the cloud, which is to say that it will store with Zoom, or to record it locally on your computer. And which of those things you do may depend on on security, how you want to distribute it, those kinds of things. Does that answer that question?
I saw a question that asked if you can start and stop the recording.
Yes, you can start and stop the recording. You can pause it. I should point out that if you use breakout rooms, it will only record the main session. So if nothing is happening in the main room, if everybody's in a breakout room, the recording is basically useless because nothing is going on. That's just a piece. You can't record breakout rooms. It's not possible.
Ellen, are you trying to ask a question?
No, I'm just wiping sweat.
Oh.
Sorry.
No problem.
I have a question here from Liz about where is the background changing site. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the Zoom backgrounds. I know everybody loves these, but do know that they are dependent on your device. Your device may or may not be able to handle them. Where you find that is at the bottom next to the video button where it says stop video. You'll see a little caret that goes up. If you click on that little caret, there should be an option. If your device is capable of it, there will be an option that says choose virtual background. And under that, there is likely, once you click that, it'll open a window, and there are a bunch of options there, but one of them will be choose virtual background. There usually are some that are stock in there, and there's also usually a little plus button next to it so that you could load your own photos in if you wanted to. If it says something to the effect of you don't have a green screen, or this is only available with a green screen, that means your device isn't really capable of handling a full virtual background. What it wants you to have is an actual green curtain behind you, or some unicolor curtain behind you. And so if you had that, it would figure out how to determine your face versus the background, and it would figure out where to put the background properly. But sometimes you'll see people who kind of, you know, like it goes over their face and all kinds of things, and that just means that the device the graphic processor on the device is having trouble distinguishing between the face and the background. And it also is helpful if you have a much.
I just put up the Golden Gate Bridge behind me. For those of you who see me, I just did that right now. And so, you know, you can all pick out your own image.
Annie, who's not Epola. Who's not Epola.
No, it's Lynn.
Has her actual hand raised. Lynn.
Lynn, yes, please. I'm confused about the share screen or where faces show up. I seem to be on all day today, and I think that other people should be on there, on the other.
So there's two separate
gallery view, yeah.
Yeah, so gallery view. So that is, let me show you that screen again. So that's usually it's in the upper right. It depends a little bit on your, again, it depends on your thing, but the little button that says speaker view or gallery view is in the upper right, and that's how you toggle between those two views. Does that make sense? So
I could find it.
And it may depend on your device. Your device may not have the capacity to do it depending on how much screen room it has. So something small is less likely to have a gallery view than something bigger.
Okay, thanks.
And just a little tidbit when I'm screen sharing like this. So I actually have multiple monitors, so this is easier for me. But for those of you for whom this is not so great, you should know that your screen is actually kind of a split screen, and you can actually move that middle bar to the left or right in order to make the screen share bigger or make the speaker or gallery view bigger. Does that make sense?
What's the best thing to stay on in terms of
whatever works for you? Honestly, it's whatever works for you. Whatever you are most comfortable with.
Okay.
And one more thing is that you can also pin people. So you'll notice that if you hover over somebody's little box and you see those 3 little dots in the upper right, and you click on those 3 little dots, it will say pin this video on the first screen. So you can do that, or on the second screen. So you can do that in order to keep somebody front and center, essentially, even if they're not talking. So if there's somebody that you just want to see the whole time, you can pin them to your front page, and then you can see them the whole time.
So Monica, Carol Ott wants to know how long the practicums are. Are they also an hour?
Probably, yeah. They'll be as long as we need them to be in order to get everybody comfortable with the stuff that we're going to do. But I've scheduled them for an hour, yeah. And we can always schedule more if we need to. And what we'll be doing in those is we will actually, and those are sort of particularly for people who want to know about hosting Zoom meetings, so that we can throw around the hosting and let you actually experience what it's like to host, so you can see all the functions of a host, and you can play around with breakout rooms and screen sharing, so that you have the chance to do that, because those are things that you can't really do in the like Zoom test meeting.
I have a question.
Hi, Nancy. Nancy she raised her hand, and we totally ignored it. See, this is why you need moderators, and you get why you need multiple people handling
it. I raised my hand under the participants. Did you see that, or nobody?
Yes, I did see that. I just I saw it, I noticed it, and then I got to answering another question and forgot it was there.
Yeah.
And Michelle also raised her hand.
I just need some basic stuff about the chat room. I've tried to do this when our church is on, and they want us to tell our prayers, and I write something in on the computer, and then there's nothing that says send it, and so nobody ever hears what I'm asking.
Just hit enter. You should just be able to hit enter or return, whichever is on your computer, and it should enter it in the chat room. So just go down to the chat room right now. Go ahead and open the chat room right now.
Yeah, I have the chat room open, and I'd written, please review how to use chat. So. And
did you hit return?
No, I didn't. So I hit,
there you go.
I hit enter.
Oh, wait. Yep. Oh, sorry. Thanks. Thanks, Annette. I'm stopping that screen share. There you go. Are you back?
Yeah, everybody's back.
Okay, I still didn't get, it doesn't look like the message that I sent comes up for y'all to see.
It does not, which is kind of interesting.
And that's
And
what
some-
always happens when I do this. So I need to figure out how to do it.
Okay, I just sent you a private message. Do you get that private message?
I did, yeah.
Okay, so just try typing a message back to me. It should default to sending it directly to me.
Okay.
And let's see, while you're doing that, let's talk to Michelle. Michelle, where are you? Michelle Watson, she was on the front page and then she left. No, Michelle? How about Kathy Nelson? Oh, Michelle's still on mute.
I think Michelle is muted.
Michelle, are you there? I don't know. We've lost Michelle. Kathy, you're up.
I did not get Monica's email when she gave it so that we can call to sign for the.
I will put it in the chat window and I'll put that link again in here.
Okay.
There's the sign up link. So there's my email and the sign up link.
I see Michelle's name, but I don't see her her picture.
Nancy, we see your message.
I did.
No, I was just actually fooling around with the tablet just to see how it worked. So and the hand was raised, but I have no questions.
Okay, I'm going to lower your hand then. And Nancy, did you
Thanks.
figure out how to get that message out? You sent a message to everyone. Just be aware when you use the chat window, do be careful to notice who you are sending chat messages to. You can send them privately to individuals. You can send them to everyone. Again, that depends on how the meeting is set up. Sometimes those options are not allowed, but if you have all the options allowed, then you can send them privately to individual people or to everyone. I have more than once sent messages to the wrong people, and God help you if you send something to everybody that you don't want everyone to read. So,
I still have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Does it put my name on it? Because when I did write to you and say I got it, all it said was me. You wouldn't know who me is, of course.
It says, to us, it says Nancy. It says who you are.
Okay.
To us, it says Nancy Felice.
Yeah, to you it says me, but to us it says Nancy.
Okay. So I could send a prayer, for instance, here at church, and by just hitting enter after I do it. Is that what
Helen,
you're
can you
saying?
please mute yourself?
I got her.
About 1:30? Okay.
I muted her and then she hit mute and unmuted herself.
Thanks.
Okay.
All right, Nancy, you all squared?
Yeah. I just want to know how I can send a message when I'm in church. You know, I'd like to ask prayers for Joe Blow, whatever. And so I would go to chat, I assume, and then let's see what happens. I don't see the thing where it says, you know, the screen where I can type anything. I just see everybody's name.
The chat, you're looking at participants. You're not looking at the chat window. You need to open the chat window.
Okay.
So click on chat instead of participants.
Okay, I see that. Okay.
There you go. And then where it says type message here, that's where you type the message and just hit return and it will pop the message up.
Return meaning enter? Is that what
Enter,
you
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then that will send it to whoever's monitoring my message, right?
Correct. So if you see right above that where it says type message here, right above that it says to, and there's a little selection box. And that selector says everyone, or it says a specific person.
Oh, okay, I see.
So if it says everyone, that's how you send it to everyone. And if it
Okay.
says a specific name, that's how you send it to a specific person.
All right.
So just be careful and watch that little selector.
Is there a limit to how many characters you can put in there? I don't mean like I type a book, but I just mean.
I'm sure there is at some point. I've never seen it hit. I mean, I've typed,
Okay.
yeah, I don't.
Because I tried to send a prayer for like 3 or 4 people and to
Yeah, yeah.
everyone, and then it'll stop in mid-sentence and not get sent. Well, I didn't know how to send it. That was.
It should be fine, but if you hit return, right? So if you're hitting enter at the end of your line, each of those is going to get posted as a separate line, essentially.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Can I try it with you and just send you
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, let's see.
I'm beginning to see several people saying goodbye. We had 162 and now we're down to 127 people, but people are starting to leave. Are we getting to the point of wanting to wrap up?
Yes, this is Nancy. I just have a quick tip for those of you who have your chat room open to the side of your screen. One of the nifty tricks that Annie has taught us, that if you want to if you're on a computer and you want to take your phone out, you can take a picture of the chat, and that way, like say on Monica's practicum ID, you can take a picture of that and then you will have it on your phone, because when you go to see the recording of this later on, you will not see the chat room. But it's really helpful instead of trying to write down that whole lengthy link there. Just take a picture of it with your cell phone. And I think that
I have a question. I have a question.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, Lois.
If you don't want to see the chat at all, how do you stop from seeing that? Because I've been in seminars and webinars with Zoom, and it gets so annoying because people are chatting back and forth and it's at the bottom of my screen and it's distracting. How do you prevent from seeing all these little chats? You don't see the whole thing, but you see it keep coming up. How can I just not see it at all? Because I don't want to be bothered.
Sadly, I don't think that's actually an option. I mean, on mine, it actually shows up as a separate window. And so if I just close the window, I will see the count of chat things, but I don't actually see anything come up. So that's going to be device specific, and I don't know of a way to turn that off. Does anybody else have an idea about that?
Well, Lois, on mine, if you head all the way up to the very top, the first chat, there's a little down arrow right next to the word chat. So scroll all the way up to the very top and click on that arrow, and it removes the chat. Do you see that?
Okay.
Click on that and it should disappear. And Donna did mention that you can in fact save the chat locally to your computer. So if you use those, yeah. So on mine, there's a button with 3 little dots, and you can click on that and you can save the chat, and that will it'll just save a little record of the chat in a text format for you. So you can go back to it later if you want.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you, Monica.
Thank you, Donna, for bringing that up.
Did you see my hand up?
Sarah's got her hand up. Yes, you've had your hand up for a while.
Yes. I had a quick question. Will there be a tutorial on how to put the PowerPoint to the Zoom?
Oh, what a great question. Well, I would advise joining the practicum.
That's another practicum.
Join the practicum, because that's a screen share problem, and it's a PowerPoint setup and screen share issue, and that's easier to do at the practicum. Yeah. Thanks, Sarah. Paulette?
Yes.
Actually, yeah.
I sent you a text. I wanted to know, how do you avoid being Zoom bombed? We have not been able to have a Zoom service since the Sunday we got Zoom bombed.
I have had the fortune to not be Zoom bombed yet. I would say the best, my thinking is, well, a couple of things. One, password protect as much as you can, which means though if you're going to make a public link, it's going to be a public link. So, it's going to be public and they're going to be able to get in anyways. Number 2, have somebody who is a well-trained host that can remove people immediately. so that, and who knows how to remove people quickly so that as soon as it happens, you remove them. There is a setting in Zoom that is, that for meetings, that is, if you remove somebody, they cannot come back into the meeting. So as long as you have that setting checked when you set up the meeting, you remove them, they're gone, they can't come back. Now they could come back under another name. Okay, so the other thing is to use a waiting room. So a waiting room is basically okay, so what happens from the host perspective with a waiting room is your participants window shows who's in the meeting, and it also shows who's in the waiting room, and you can choose to admit them one at a time, or you can admit all. So you can basically see who's coming in beforehand. Now that may or may not help you, because you may, or, you know, most people you might recognize, but people, you know, look at who's on this meeting. People come in with all kinds of names, right? We don't necessarily know all of those names. And there's not really a way to, you can do kind of a one-way communication with people in the waiting room, but you can't do a two-way. So there's no way to ask them who they are, basically. So you either, but you would know as a host, you know when you're letting somebody in that you don't recognize, so that you can keep an eye on them, so that if they are a Zoom bomber, you just remove them immediately.
So you can also have a registration. You can require people to register for the meeting. And that way, ahead of time, you can look at who's registered. You can go through and say, oh, no, you know, that person. No, that person. And you can immediately not, you know, take them off the list. And, you know, when the Zoom bomb started, it was back before Zoom required passwords. And so a lot of it has self-corrected now that everybody has to have a password. But you can register, you can review, you can have, you know, you can have people in the waiting room. All those take a little extra time. But what we do for Sunday worship is we have a waiting room. And I'm usually one of the co-hosts to make sure that the people in the waiting room are acceptable.
Okay, thanks.
So I am mindful
Looks
of
like Annette is physically raising her hand.
Well, and Karen Swan's had her virtual hand raised for a while.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with Karen. Annette, we'll get to you in just a second, but Karen Swan has had her hand virtually raised for quite some time.
First of all, thank you very much. Comment regarding signing up for the practicum. Maybe folks already know this, but I went into the chat, I hit your website, I went in, it allowed me to sign up for the practicum. I was able to hear the meeting while I was doing it and then rejoin. And I just thought I'd share that with, but maybe everybody already knew that, so. But, so you don't have to take a screenshot, you can go and register right now. So, thank you, and I'll see you on Wednesday.
Thank you, Karen. All right, Annette, and then Nancy has her hand up again.
Well, now I have to remember what I was going to ask you because I got sidetracked.
Sorry. Be patient and be willing to let delays happen. It happens. All right, Nancy, did you have another question? Your hand is still up.
I just want to make sure that I did send one, and I guess you got it.
Yep.
Prayers for Manny, Mo, and Jack,
yep.
And horses. Okay.
The horses they rode in on. I like that.
So are you saying that on your end it says not just from me, but it says from Nancy Felice?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, good. That's all. So I think I know now how to do it. So I appreciate your help. Thank you.
Great. Excellent. Kathy has her hand up again. She's muted. You're muted. Unmute. Can't hear you. Still muted. Somebody did mention that you can.
Annette's got her hand up again. She might have remembered her question.
Okay.
I did indeed. There was a document attached to this invitation to this training, and it had a whole bunch of plugins or whatever. Are y'all going to be talking about that later, or what am I supposed to do with all that?
I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm sorry.
Oh dear. Well, I may have to forward it to you then. Because, I mean, it had plugins all over the place. Window plugin, this for automatic quick thing, and it was in the document that was attached.
That's not something that we sent.
Yeah.
Maybe that was
The
the
announcement
test.
came from the national office, and I don't remember seeing that, so.
Well, they usually attach a test, you know, test your Zoom or something. They do attach those.
All right, thank you.
This had a lot of things. It had about six or seven different.
Oh, I don't know. Okay, Kathy, you're unmuted now.
Email, should we send the request to come to the practicum? Because you listed two.
What is?
On the chat thing? You
Yeah.
listed two emails. One looks like your personal one, starts with M. Burden and goes a.national.org. And the other one was http://
Okay, so the second one is a link. And if you go to that, that's a website. It's a link to a website. And if you go to that website, you can click on one of those. There's 3 links embedded on there, and you can click on one of those to register for a practicum. It has the time and date for those practicums. If those don't work for you, or if you want to set up a different time, just send me an email, which is the mburden@doknational.org.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Nancy, do we want to wrap this up? And if people want to hang out and afterwards and chat, I'm happy to do that. But
yeah, it's better on the bigger screen because you see more people. Look at.
I think we have now dropped down to 85, which is half of our guests. And so we do appreciate very much your signing up to join us. And we hope that you leave a little bit wiser, a little bit more knowledgeable than when you came in. And we are grateful to have provided this for you. I think what we will do now is just close the meeting, Monica. And for those that have any kind of specific questions, to follow her instructions, either to join the practicum or to send her an email. And so
Nancy, could you close us in prayer as you are so wonderfully gifted to do?
Absolutely, I would be happy to do that. Most gracious and loving God, we thank you for the ability to gather in whatever format that we can, to be connected heart to heart, mind to mind, but most especially to always remember that you are also the silent listener to our every conversation. We ask that you send your blessings, pour out your blessings upon all of us, upon those on the call, upon those who are of our order, sisters throughout this world. Bless us, keep us, and safeguard us from all dangers, everything in this world that is so uncertain right at this moment. We thank you and bless you. And in the name of Jesus the Christ, we ask all these prayers. Amen.